我还有好多忙得要命。
就是啊，你一定好多东西要放啊，不知放哪里。
要放，然后我又要我那个婆婆的车子要卖，我今天又开到那个卖车的买那个旧车的地方去让他估价，他还没有1万mile，可是是2007年的，他说要6500块，他要买我的6500块，所以我现在就卖给 Travel 的那个亲戚，用6500块。如果他不给，我就卖给这个人了。
对啊，是
啊，
是啊，这样很好嘛。
这样很好嘛。然后那个 Volkswagen 我又撞歪了，
真的啊。
那我就昨天又开到一个 Volkswagen 的地方去估价要修，他跟我说，他说你这个是多少？什么时候摔歪的？我说2年。你就骗他说你最近歪的，他就会给你付钱，所以我就骗了他。
你还在这里宣布 ？OK， 后来呢？
后来，所以他们会就有一个人来 evaluate， 然后就这样子，所以累死了。
那你没有 deductible 哈？
有 deductible 500块，可是我这个要超过2、3千块嘛，那我想就让他就算了，就歪一歪。这些都是无妄之灾。
就是
下个礼拜就 closing 了，那个房子就卖了。哎呀，快死掉了，
真是累得不得了，
累得不得了，
千头万绪。
千头万绪。OK， 你就上课吧，我就不讲了。
我还有一些真的2分钟了。OK， we're going to try something different today, and I gave you this link to a movie, and I hope you all watched it. It's a very, very old movie. I think I watched it when I was maybe 10 years old. But later on, I watched it again. And this time when I watched, I find it very interesting and beautiful, much better than I thought. My previous opinion about this movie was so-so, but I really enjoyed it this time. What do you think? To be successful, our class today, it's heavily dependent on everybody participating. If I'm just tired of talking to myself all the time for 2 years. So if you would say anything at all, I will be very happy. I hope you have watched this movie, right? You can all unmute yourself and just like a tea time. Yeah, they have this program called the tea time. Everybody just talk and talk. Okay.
Yes, I watched it. I think it's a very well done movie.
I think it's very well done, yes. Even though it's all fake, but it's really well done.
Even though it's a very classic, old-fashioned presentation. Yeah. But he's a lovely guy. And
yeah. But the story is made up. Yeah.
He said like a heart like a child. Very innocent, very almost pure.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was and the color, the music, the background, the fairy tale, very another world compared to today. The reality is it's enchanting, I think.
Yes, that's the right word. Yes.
Right. And I was very touched by their relation, the assistant Peter. I mean, he's almost, even though he's younger, he's the disciple, he's the assistant, but he's almost like taking a role of, he protects his master.
Yes.
Yeah. was very, very nice. Very, very heartwarming story. Very nice.
Hey, Joe, this is Sophia.
Yeah.
I also watched the movie.
Oh, you're here. Okay.
Yeah. My first question is this a real story about Hans Christian Andersen?
Not at all, actually.
So he did not in love with Valentina.
Oh, that's totally made up. There was no such
totally
thing.
Made up?
But not only that, you look at this. Can you see my share screen?
Yeah.
The first paragraph, it says the movie begins by saying this is not the story of his life, but a fairy tale about this great spinner of fairy tales.
Yeah, I saw that sentence, but I just wonder, in the movie, it seems it's his kind of part of his life, got involved with that lady. That's why I was wondering is this a true story or not, but actually it's just a fairy tale.
Yeah, I think the part about the ballerina is totally not true at all, but not just that. It is whether how old this person was and where he lived, and everything about the story is totally fake. They just made it all up, not just the romance, but everything. And here we have this word spinner. Spin is to turn something around and around very quickly, but it also means to 纺纱. So you have cotton or wool or something, you spin the wheel. You have in the fairy tale, the Sleeping Beauty, this girl, when she was, I guess she was 16 or something, she was spinning the wheel to make thread out of fiber, and she had the finger pricked by this machine, and she fell asleep for 100 years. That's just the story of the Sleeping Beauty, 就是睡美人这个故事. So in every family, there used to be a spinning wheel, because you will gather wool from the sheep, or you will pick cotton, and then the woman in the house would spin the wheel, and as they twist this fiber together, it becomes a yarn, and it becomes a spool of yarn, and then you can put on the loom and weave fabric to make clothes for the family. So we think that a person who spins a wheel is making something fanciful, and it may not even be true, but they make cotton or wool into beautiful fabric. So that is what we use the word for. A spinner is somebody make things up in order to show people something that's beautiful and may not be true. That's called a spinner. So a good storyteller is a good spinner. So here I have the word spin, to rotate or to revolve or gyrate. All these three words means to move something very quickly around and around. And to extend the meaning of the word, you usually would use this word to mean a woman, usually making yarn by twisting and winding fibers together. So 纺纱这件事就叫做 spin. And then you extend the meaning a little bit further. You would mean that this person presents or describes or interprets something to introduce a not very truthful way, so that it gives something a favorable or advantageous appearance. 就是把一个事情讲得天花乱坠，让人家觉得他说得非常好. So the word that we use very often nowadays is about a politician. The politician would hire a spinner to help them to present an image so that they can win more votes. So spinning something is very, very important nowadays. We call it public relations, but it's really just to lie, to make something more presentable than it really is. And in this case, we're talking about a storyteller. He is a spinner of fairy tales. It doesn't have that very bad meaning and that political meaning, but it just means that he could talk and talk so that the story becomes so wonderful, not necessarily to cheat people, but to bring people into a different world. That's what this means. Okay, let's come back to this. Okay, somebody, you could pick up from here.
So is this called fabricated? The story?
Yeah, they admit at the beginning of the movie that this, you cannot believe anything they tell you. It's all fake. It is about a person they imagine, a wonderful person. Well, it turns out he must be a wonderful person and he must love children. But there are probably darker things about him that they ignored the whole thing. Also, for example, the town, it is presented to you as such a beautiful, wonderful place. And when he was walking, I don't know how he walked from his home to the ferry dock. And on the road, you see him walking back and forth several times. And it's just like a fairy tale. It's not an ordinary road. It is a make-believe, beautiful road. His stories are so wonderful, and I think the person who wrote the script and the person who wrote the lyrics really bring up the best in his story. They put it into a background with this child thinking or saying something, and it all come together to become a whole story that included all those wonderful little fairy tales.
Yeah, even though they're stories that for children, but there are a lot of truth in it. For instance,
lots of truth and
new clothes. I mean,
yes,
because we don't want to seem ignorant. So even though it is a naked guy there, but we'll say, well, it's a beautiful and all that. I can see that in adult world. So
it's, that's
applies
very
to other situations. Yeah.
And stories like the Ugly Duckling.
Yes.
It's very encouraging for a child who's being bullied in the school.
That's right. Yeah. Very, very. The world needs a lot more people like them. Make a better world. Yeah. Even though, and also because of his the way he sees the world, I think that's probably one of the reasons when he saw one scene, story, that the ballerina and the choreographer happened to be her husband, but they had quarreled over something and they slapped her.
Yeah, that's right.
He assumed that relationship, she's being abused, she, he's coming to save her out of that situation. But he doesn't realize perhaps in the real world, things like that do happen. It doesn't mean what it seems, right? So it's interesting. So,
let me see.
I don't know. Did he himself sing songs? The songs that in the movie.
You mean the actor? Yeah, he sang all the songs. Yes.
So he's a singer also.
Yes, he's pretty good. If you have seen him in White Christmas, he and Bing Crosby, they were together, they sang a lot of songs, and Bing Crosby is indisputably one of the best in the world, but he is okay. I mean, he could sing duos and so on. Yeah, he was very good. And he's a comedian. When we think about the comedian, they talk about jokes, but he has a lot of different ways to do this comedy, different from other comedians. For example, he would make strange sounds. Even when he was singing, he would do, or sometimes he would sing very, very fast, even in other movies. Yeah, he's a very talented comedian.
Yeah. I looked him up a little bit. He was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, really?
New York, yeah.
Okay.
In 1911. Yeah.
He almost looked European to me.
Yeah, he does, right? Yeah.
A fine gentleman.
Yeah.
When I was little, I heard that he loves Chinese cooking, and he is a good cook. So he's always promoting Chinese dishes and the way to cook the Chinese way. And at that time, I was very, very young. And I thought anybody who said anything good about mainland China must be a bad person or must be a communist. So I did not like him too much. Yeah, that shows how much we were brainwashed throughout our lives.
The first part of our lives, anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
This one of the very first slides I was going to say was about his name. I mean, this fairy tale storyteller's name is Anderson, and we are more familiar with the last name that's Anderson, S-O-N. That's because the son means the son of somebody. So if you're an English person, if your father is Richard or Paul or Ander or whatever, then eventually the last name will become with S-O-N at the end. But when you're not English speaking, and you are a Scandinavian person, then your last name is quite often ending with S-E-N, which has the same meaning in their language, which means the son. Or you can find a name that ends with data or daughter, which means the daughter of somebody. But I've never seen that before. I always see son. I don't see daughter. I don't know. And the very funny thing is they say currently over 2/3 of the Danish population have a surname ending in S-E-N. That is a huge proportion of people having last name ended in S-E-N. So if it's a Scandinavian person, and when they spell it, you could probably bet it should end in S-E-N, not S-O-N. And as in the first bullet on the first line, it says, or S-S-O-N. Yeah, I've seen people with that kind of last name. There is a .com tech person early on. I think he invented something like the worksheet or something, and his name is Anderson, S-S-E-N actually. So that's just a little bit about his name. When I wrote the name Hans Christian Andersen, I make a point to remind you that it ended in S-E-N, not S-O-N.
Yeah.
The Iceland, the woman's last name is daughter, so and so's daughter.
Oh, I see. Okay. Iceland was also part of the Viking territory. Yeah, Swedish and Norwegian and the Danish. What's the other one? Oh, Finland is a little farther away. So they're all part of Scandinavia. Yeah. Especially Greenland was or is even now ruled by Denmark. Yes.
Denmark. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is all the people involved in this story, in this movie. It's a Hollywood musical film, so it's made in Hollywood. And there's the director, Charles, either Vidor or Vidor. If you're English speaking, you would probably say Vidor. And he is from Hungary, so I don't know how you pronounce his last name. But there's another also very famous director called Victor Vidor or Vidor, but they are not related. Yeah, King Vidor was the director of, say, War and Peace. And these are all very famous directors. Here come all these people on this slide are very, very famous. The lyrics and the music, which is a kind of rare thing. Usually a person would write the lyrics and one person would write the music. But Frank Lesser, how you pronounce his last name as Lesser, he wrote lyrics and music. And he also did many other musicals. And the screenplay was done by Moss Hart and Ben Hecht. And these two are extremely, extremely famous people. There was a movie critic, he wrote for Time magazine, and once he said, Ben Hecht is the best or ever, the greatest screenplay writer ever lived. But of course, people go to the movie, they don't often look at the director or playwright or whatever. They just watch. Only the actors or actresses are there for most people to enjoy. They do not pay much attention to the rest of them. So for this movie, Danny Kaye is indisputably the protagonist of this movie because no one else in the movie come any close to that. I was going to put this here, but I should delete it. This is a place where you can find many groups of lyrics. I thought if you go there and look for this movie, then you can find all the lyrics for all the songs in this movie. Then I think it's very interesting or very good for you to learn English if you go find all the lyrics of this movie because they're very not hard at all and very 怎么说朗朗上口 you just sing it all the time. You'll be walking around and you will be singing it. So if you could catch the lyrics, that would be helpful. However, I decided now to delete it because I was just doing it this morning. And I looked at one song and I looked at another and I looked at the third one and I was hacked. So I do not recommend you to go to that website. I don't know if it is that website or if it's anything else. My computer was just froze. And this warning says, your computer is now locked down. Do not attempt to turn it off because that would only damage your computer further. And I really tried to do all sorts of things unsuccessfully. So I just shut it down. You can do that by pressing your on-off key until it turns off, and then it's okay. It didn't do any damage to me, but it scared the hell out of me. And I don't know why it happened. Okay. Anyone want to say anything else?
There's one word in there that I didn't quite get, and I looked it up in the dictionary. It's not in my dictionary, which is an old one, but it's Burgomaster or something. How do you pronounce that? Burgomaster.
I think
Is that like a borough or the administrative head of the, or is that a schoolmaster?
like a mayor or a town magistrate or somebody. It's a administrative.
It's a title?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
What I remember was there is a famous sculpture by Rodin. What's his first name? Emile Gustave Rodin, 就是罗丹，罗丹哈。He had many very famous sculptures. One is Le Penseur, the thinker. 就是有一个人坐在那里。And another one is a group of people, like 5 or 6 people, each wearing long clothes. And this title is called the burgomasters of the town or something like that.
Okay.
So that's where I encountered that word. So I think that just means a town, but it's probably in German or something. For one thing, many of the cities in Germany ended with Burg, B-U-R-G, which just means a town, I suppose.
A burgomaster is usually the mayor of village.
Yeah, yes, I think so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's not about the school teacher, but it's about the town's mayor.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah.
So here it says it was inspired by this person who wrote many world-famous fairy tales, but the story is totally made up. It's not a biography. And in this movie, we see Anderson was a small-town cobbler. Cobbler is a 鞋匠, 补鞋匠或者做鞋的人哈。I have read somewhere people say he was not a cobbler, but he was some kind of apprentice or doing some kind of manual job. But some people think that he was a cobbler. At least the little museum I went to, Hans Christian Andersen Museum in Solbon, California, just north of Los Angeles. They had some tools of the trade of cobblers on display in that museum. So it's possible that he was a cobbler. Cobbler comes from the verb cobble. Cobble is just to do some work using your hand to make something together, to make it work. And adding an R at the end means the person who does such a thing. However, we also use that word cobbler to mean some kind of fruit dessert. For example, it can be a apple cobbler or peach cobbler or cherry cobbler. So you would have some kind of bread or scone-like thing or biscuit and a layer of fruits in the syrup. Then you bake them together, and that's a fruit cobbler. If you go to your regular standard cookbook, you can find lots of them. I myself, I have an apple tree, and sometimes I get no apples whatsoever, like the year before. But last year I got tons of apple, and pretty good ones too. So I had to how do you say that? You would pare the skin and core it and cut into pieces and steam it a little bit just for 1 minute and put into bags and put in the freezer. So throughout the year, I would take out the bag and make an apple cobbler. That's what I do. Yeah, but apples in this area is very hard to grow. They get worms in it, almost 100%, yeah. If I don't do something to it, or even if I spray it diligently, still they got worms in it. If I get 100 apples, maybe 1 or 2 are without worms. That's how bad they are. So this says very well. It says he has a childlike heart and a vivid imagination. You just marvel when he's spinning the tale. It's so wonderful that a person could look at the same thing as you're doing and think about all those wonderful things. I just lack that kind of imagination, and I admired either him or the writer or the lyricist. They really did a good job. Because it's a fake story, the Danish authority, they were not happy at all because they have their own hero, national hero. Denmark is a very small country, so they hang on to this very few world famous personalities, and they were not happy that the American, especially like a Disney-like company, would make this their hero into whatever story they made it into. They were not happy because it's not true. So they wanted to sue the company, but apparently they didn't. Okay, they were going to make a formal protest against it. If you go to, yes?
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, but I don't know, but maybe the film also definitely put the Hans Christian Andersen, of course, is already well known worldwide, but the Little Mermaid that on the rock probably presented. I don't think it was in this film though that they talk about the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, they didn't mention
was
that.
It? You didn't mention.
I don't think it's there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. But
it's a more complicated story, and it's decidedly very sad. So maybe that's why. But The Little Mermaid is one of his most famous stories.
Yeah, and it brought a lot of tours to Denmark. I think
yes,
if people go to Denmark, it's a must see, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't need any tour guide. On the first day I landed, I just went there by myself.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Are you able to touch it?
No, it's a little far away from you, but it's very close to the shore. I didn't try to climb over. So I'll show you some of the pictures I took in Denmark, and this is definitely one of their greatest hero. Everywhere you go, you would see his statue and the things that mention him.
Yeah.
These are the sounds in this movie. The King's New Clothes, The Inchworm. I'm Hans Christian Andersen, wonderful Copenhagen. Yeah, Thumbelina is the finger painted doll, puppet, yes.
That's very cute.
Yeah, The Ugly Duckling is, he talks about this to a little boy who was very shy at school. And his father was so delighted that he decided to bring some of his stories. We don't know if it's true. And the last two is more involved with this ballerina, which is decidedly not a true story. He lived to be about 70 years old. And as far as I know, he's not married. And if you read more about him, you can see that he had many homosexual episodes. He was involved with quite a few different people, whether they're famous or rich and powerful or just regular folks. There were quite a lot of them. Apparently, you cannot tell from the movie.
Mm.
This here says he's a writer of plays, travelogues, novels, and poems. So all these things he wrote, and he was quite popular because he wrote those things, especially the travelogues, which means that he traveled around and wrote about his travels. But nowadays, no one read or talk about his plays or travelogues or novels or poems. Just about nobody. Maybe in Denmark they still do, but the whole world, everywhere you can read his fairy tales, and they're really very touching.
Mm.
His collection of fairy tales, there are 156 stories. That's quite a lot. So they were not published all at once. He would have one collection and then another and so on. And they were translated into 125 languages. It says here it's embedded in the West's collective consciousness. Even in the East, he really influenced a lot of people, including us. We probably all read some of his stories.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot just say it's West, but the little museum I visited to last year, actually, it has a collection of many translated books of his fairy tales, and at least 2 of them I saw were printed in Chinese. So
简体的还是
yes,
繁
I think it's Jianti. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that and show you some picture that I took. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're easily accessible to children. That's why we say they're fairy tales. Fairy tales mean not even about fairies. For example, The Emperor's New Clothes is not a fairy tale. It's not about a fairy, but when we say fairy tales, we mean those tales that you tell to the children which are not facts or not true or whatever. So not necessarily because they involve fairies. And because they were written for children to read, so they're accessible. The language is simple. The story is easily understandable. So here it says it's readily accessible to children, but it presents letters of virtue and resilience in the face of adversity. It presents lessons, 就是给我们一些教训的意思哈。什么样的教训呢？就是 virtue and resilience. It tells you what is good. For example, you should not cheat. That's a good virtue. So it tells people, not only children, how to be virtuous and how to be resilient, which means everybody in life, you will encounter difficulties. You will have things that are not going your way, but you have to hang in there so that you can get through it. So it's inspiring and helps the children or people to weather through difficulty times. And this difficult time is called adversity, 就是不顺意的事情啊，艰难困苦的事情都可以算作 adversity. And in the face of 就是你面对这个困难的时候 you have to be resilient 啊，就是能够很坚持下去而成功哈。So it's for a mature readers as well. Okay. So let's just talk about Hans Christian Andersen for a while. And at the end, if we have time, we can talk about the people who made the movie. He wrote all these stories, The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid. Yeah, here we mentioned The Little Mermaid, which is was adapted into a Disney cartoon. Yeah, because it is a longer story. Many of the Disney movies, cartoons were from German fairy tales. We say the Grimm brothers, 就是格林童话, but this one is from Hans Christian Andersen. The Steadfast Tin Soldier. The Nightingale, I think it's about an emperor in China who loves to listen to the nightingale sing every night. But then somebody gave the emperor a music box, a toy. You can wind up and it plays. And the emperor forgot about the real nightingale. And he listened to this mechanical bird every day and forgot about the real bird until he was very sick. And that real bird came back and sings for him. And he was very happy. The lesson is that the mechanical thing is not good. It's not the real feeling. The most beautiful thing is the singing bird and not a mechanical bird. The Ugly Duckling, The Little Match Girl. That is a sad story, but it's pretty short. And it's about a girl who was selling match in winter. And she was very cold, and she had to use up one and another of her little matches to warm up. And every time she strikes the match, she would have a vision of a wonderful place or things or something that reminds her of good days. And in the end, I guess the girl died. In the so-called good old days, lots of people died of starvation or coldness, because you do need to have some basic money coming in all the time in order to keep paying all the bills or buy things you need. So actually, nowadays, I think it's probably much better than the good old days. And all these stories that he wrote inspired people to make ballet or play or cartoon or opera or even live action movies. Yeah, he's not going to die. Everybody will remember him forever. And because he was not too long ago, so we had real pictures, photographs of him. These were taken in 1860. This is Denmark. Okay, you can hardly see. It's a quite small country right north of Germany, and it's connected, partially connected to Germany. So Germany at the very northern end, there is a big peninsula that belongs to Denmark, but Denmark has also many other islands, and the places we usually talk about, like Copenhagen or Odense, which is Hans Christian Andersen's hometown, they were not connected to Germany. They were on one of the many other islands. So you can see that here we have this border between Germany and Denmark. And this one is a big, big peninsula, which consists of more than half of the whole country. But the most important part, where the capital is way over here, almost close to Sweden. Is that Sweden? Yeah, that's Sweden. Yeah. Okay. One day I was attending a wedding there on the beach, a little north of Copenhagen. We could almost see Sweden across the water. That's very close. Of course, if you take the ferry from here to here and across the part, that is even closer, very, very close. We did take the ferry over there. Here you can see this town is called the Helsingborg. And across this water, which is a strait, there is a Danish town with a very similar name. I think it's called Helsingborg or something. And if you know the Shakespearean tragedy, Hamlet, that was because the Danish people built a castle here. And Shakespeare heard about that castle. So he imagined and he created the story of Hamlet about a Danish prince who could not make up his mind whether he wants to kill his mother or not. And eventually, almost all the people he knew died because of that. Of course, that's because his father was killed by his mother. Okay, what I'm going to say, that's beside the point. What I'm going to say is this part of Denmark is extremely close to Sweden. Okay, and here is a much smaller island, and right in the middle of it is Hans Christian Andersen's hometown, Odense. And we heard that he hated his hometown very, very much. So he escaped and just packed up and left it as soon as he could. But apparently, maybe he went back or something. The whole town really, really prospered because of it was his hometown. And many tourists would come here and went there. That's what I did. Yeah, I went and took a ferry over there, but I came back over the ferry from here. So if you want to go to Denmark, Copenhagen is a beautiful, beautiful town. Yeah. And you watch Hans Christian Andersen singing this thing. He was here. Then he must have taken a ferry. In the movie, you saw him taking a ferry. But it seems that he probably came this way and went into Copenhagen directly instead of taking the ferry to here and then walked or took a carriage or something. That's interesting.
Nowadays, Sweden, Denmark, are they all part of EU?
Not all of them. When I was there in 2002, none of them were. Yeah, they all have their crowns, corona or crowns. You have Danish crown, you have a Swedish crown, and so on. But now, I think Denmark and Norway are part of the EU, but maybe Finland is definitely not because it is a neutral country. I'm not sure if Sweden, but gradually, if you see the EU's flag, you have a blue flag with a circle of yellow stars, tiny little stars, and there were 13 of them. It was like United States when it declared independence. There were 13 states, so we had 13 stars on the flag. But as we grew and grew and grew, eventually we have 50 states now. So there's no room for all those stars. But they still use this EU flag that had 13. I think it started in the year 1993. And at that time, Denmark was not part of it, but they get more and more all the time. I hate to stop share and go to find a map for you, but you can just Google EU countries and you can see what countries are part of EU.
Now they have 27.
Yeah, they have a lot. I don't know. Yeah, 27. Good to know that. Okay.
Are the language very different? The two countries, to say Finn and Finnish, the language, and Danish, are they very different?
Finnish language is decidedly totally different from any other language. In the entire Europe, the Finnish language and the Hungarian language are not Roman, not Latin, not Viking or whatever. They have
not Slavic.
Yeah, not Slavic. Yeah, I don't know where they came from. Probably
Shono.
Yeah, probably
Shono.
Hmong. Yeah.
Okay.
To the European, they shudder when they thought about Genghis Khan, because when the Mongolian went over to Europe, they conquered a very large part of Europe and killed tons of them. Yeah. And it is said that all the European people, if you do a DNA test, you can find the Genghis Khan's DNA in there. Don't quote me on that, but I heard somebody saying that.
Well, they did swipe on that part of the world. That
yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, this
But
is
I understand that
yeah.
I'm sorry. I understand that those Scandinavian countries, they usually the people can converse in English without any problem.
Oh, definitely. Yes, everyone speaks English and German, maybe even French. Yeah, when their country is so tiny, if they go out, nobody could understand their language. So they have to learn all the major languages.
Interesting.
And of course, they are more open to the other world. For example, Italy and Spain, their people are more staying close to their hometown. So if you go to Italy, there are lots of people who don't speak any English. But if you go to Copenhagen, lots of people speak. Yeah, they are very cosmopolitan.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And let's enlarge this map, and this is Copenhagen. And you can see that there are waterways that don't look like natural lakes. So they were heavily, artificial. They dig up canals and so on. So these are throughout thousands of years, they did all that to their land. And I have several markers on it. This is called the Assistance Cemetery. That's where Hans Christian Andersen was buried, along with many famous Danish people. And here is a star right by this canal. And this part is called the New Haven, or New Harbor. So he once, for many years, he lived in one of these houses right on this canal. And if you want to take a cruise around here, there are a lot of waterways you can go to, and just about all the cruises started from this area. I think I took one from here, and it would go out and like going this way, and probably it went this way too. I think it went to Christianton or something. Oh, Christian. Okay, Christian Haven. Yeah, it also went there. So for about $9, I took a cruise from here and went throughout these places. And the most famous statue was here where the Little Mermaid was. And where did I stay? I stayed way up north. I took the subway, went maybe 30 miles north of the city because I had a relative who was getting married. And that's why I stayed in his house and attended the wedding. And every day for a week, by myself, I took the subway down and I went to different places. And that's where I went on the first day to see the Little Mermaid. And this here you can see it's a star-shaped body of land with water all around. That is a castle. If you go to Europe, many of the castles would be star-shaped with water all around it. I've seen quite a few of them. And this is one of the very standard castle. So if the enemy invades, you would all retreat into the castle, which has very tall city wall, fortress, and so on. So that's a good place for a castle. And here is a big, you can say it's a central park of the city. This is called the Copenhagen. I don't know what Copen means, but Haven is a garden and Hagen is a harbor. So this big park is called the Copenhagen. And this is the Anderson's largest statue here. There are several others, but this one I decidedly visited. It's a lovely place and with castles here. So all these are the places. Did anybody go to Denmark before? No? Oh yeah, okay. Where did you go?
Well, I stayed 21 days there.
Wow, wonderful. Maybe you can tell me more about it.
We stayed in the friend's house.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Which part? In Denmark? In Copenhagen?
Denmark is right in the middle of the town and the 7th flight up.
Oh.
Apartment. Yeah.
Does it have an elevator then?
No, they don't have elevators.
Yeah, I think so. There are many, many buildings, residential buildings in Europe that are 7 stories high. I think the law probably said if you have more than 7 stories, you need to have an elevator. So yes, people do live up there.
Yeah.
Oh.
But Annie has been to one of the little islands, right?
Yeah, we went by the North Sea. Somewhere.
North Sea. Oh, really? I think North Sea is over here.
And Jutland, I went to Jutland. They have a summer house.
Oh, okay. I just went there by myself for about 5 days or 6 days. And then I joined the tour. That tour took me from here to here to here. Yeah, then we went over across to Sweden, but in Göteborg. And then we went through Norway to Bergen, and we went to Stockholm, and we came back this way. Yeah, that was 2 weeks. But as I mentioned, I have a relative who got married. That's how I was invited to visit that. That was the first time ever that I went on an international tour, to a foreign country with a tour group. That was in 2002, so that's 20 years ago. Yeah, I can say that I traveled for about 20 years now. And this is the Assistance Kierkegaard, which is the churchyard. There's a cemetery called the Assistance. And I was there on August 30, 2002. And if you remember, 2001 was the year we had 9/11. And on the last day of my trip, it was September 11th, I was in Copenhagen and I went to the American embassy, and there were flowers everywhere in front of the embassy. But this was before I took the trip with the tour group. So I went with my relatives to this cemetery. The person who's getting married is my husband's nephew, and his father, my husband's big brother, married a Danish girl, and she took me on this day to this cemetery. And these are the pictures I took of the cemetery. But this one was from the internet because I was there at the end of August, but this is like cherry blossom. So this picture was taken in the spring. And this is my sister-in-law at the grave of her, I was going to say ex. It's not an ex-husband, former husband. How do you say late husband? Okay, that's the word late. Yes. Yeah. The word is late. Late means he passed away, not because he divorced you or not because whatever. So late is the word for it. Yeah, I have a friend who was talking to other people about her ex-husband. I said, no, that's your late husband. You should not say ex-husband as if you were divorced. Yeah, so don't mix those up, okay? So she took me around on some days, and her son also, and daughter, they also took me around to some other farther away places in the suburb, but otherwise I was by myself in the city. And this is a cemetery, and I also took this picture. I almost forgot I took this picture. When I saw a similar picture in Wikipedia, I realized that, yes, I do have this picture. And so this is my picture. Hans Christian Andersen, his yeah. There was a story about where he was buried, maybe moved or I don't know, but this is, they say this is his grave. But I also took two more pictures. One is this one is Niels Bohr. That was a national hero. He's a chemist, I think. Very, very famous. And then another famous Danish person, Søren Kierkegaard. He is a 存在主义的哲学家. This is a family lot, so there are more than one stone. So this is a family grave of Kierkegaard. So I was there and I took 3 pictures there. And there are other pictures. This I didn't take. This is Hans Christian Andersen with the ugly duckling. Okay, Ugly Duckling. And this is in Central Park, New York City. And there's another one with his bust. We say only the head to the chest was in the statue. We say it's a bust, B-U-S-T. So this is in Sydney, Australia, with this harbor bridge. And I'm sure there are many others, yeah. So I just showed you this place, and I'm going to show you this place. And this is also, I took this picture myself. And this is a picture from the front. You can see this is him with some kind of laurel wreath. But if you take it from the side, you can see that there are 2 panels. Here is one and one on the other side. And this one is the story of the Ugly Duckling. And on the other side, there's a story of Thumbelina. And of course, everybody wanted to see Little Mermaid. This is probably a lady by the harbor or something, the Little Mermaid. And this is the canal where I took the ferry And you have one of these buildings. I think it's probably to the right of it. It's number 67. That was Hans Christian Andersen's apartment. This is a very, very busy place. Lots of tourists. And I had a herring lunch for $12. That every dish is a herring. You have pickled, fermented, smoked, fried, or whatever. Herring is very important to them. Then we went to Odensha, the tour guide. So it's in the middle of a smaller island that we passed through, but many people also passed through, lots of tourists. And there was his house that has the plaque on it, H.C. Henderson, who's just a house. Did anyone else visit this place? So this is the house he was in. I don't remember getting into it. I'm sure there must be a museum of some kind. This is a street it was on, and you can see their flag. All the Scandinavian flags are, a rectangle with a long cross on it, and they have different colors. This is a Danish one. Some have yellow and blue and so on. That's probably Norwegian. And we were walking in this town, and there are definitely statues of Hans Christian Andersen, and this one is in front of the museum, but our tour guide just let us loose. And this is the first time I went on a trip by joining a tour, so I was really nervous. I had a roommate, but she is traveling with her son and her daughter-in-law. So every time some people get together, she would be with her son and daughter-in-law. So I was by myself. I had to eat lunch. I remember I had a hot dog. I did not dare to go into a restaurant yet. But of course, later I learned. And this is also a picture I took nearby. It's Hans Christian Andersen Park. It's right next to a big, big church, and the statue was that of Andersen. And this park also has other beautiful water and the bridge and so on. But there is also a Hans Christian Andersen sculpture in the water in the harbor of Odensha, which is very interesting to me. I didn't find that. I didn't see it in person, but I find it in probably Wikipedia or somewhere. It strikes me as being very odd. Then if you don't grab it from me, I am going to continue to talk. Do you have anything to say? Maybe you have seen some other homes of famous people.
Well, it's not Denmark, but a couple years ago, we were in Hungary, Budapest, and we did visit the what's that famous magician? Houdini's.
Really?
Museum there,
Uh-huh.
yes. So that was interesting. So there was took a cruise from Budapest to Amsterdam, and there was 3 extra days at the beginning of the tour at the cruise at Budapest, and I was surprised how beautiful the town is. It really is. Both the pest part and the Buddha part, both beautiful old buildings and lot of history and the beautiful and delicious food. Oh, the pastry is just outstanding. It's with coffee, very, very nice. So it was wonderful. And they have a beautiful parliament right on the river and it's all lit up at night. Yeah, it's Daniel River.
Yeah, that's one of the most beautiful building I've ever seen.
Right.
However, they could not afford to pay high price for good marble. So they use the kind of cheap marble that they have to scrub it down once every few years. Otherwise, it becomes so dark and not ugly. It's quite a shame. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. They had some kind of competition so that people would submit their design for the Parliament building, and they built the one that won the prize. And there was a person who won second prize, and they built a building according to that right across the street from this Parliament.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, very nice.
And you would definitely see the memorial about their revolution while that Russian Soviet Union control. Yeah.
Yeah, so much history there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the timing was not right. They wanted to be independent, but Russia was too strong for any of them to leave until 1991. Then all of a sudden, everybody left.
Yeah.
This town was in California, Huang, just north of Santa Barbara. I wonder if anybody have been there. Years ago in 1991, when I drove through, I went into this town for maybe half an hour. But this time when I came the other way from Los Angeles and from Santa Barbara, we stayed there for maybe from 3 o'clock until it's very dark. And this is a Danish town. I don't know why the Danes would go there. And everything in it is, they just try to attract tourists because of this very different history of this town. So they're doing great business by entertaining these tourists. But now that I studied it, I realized that it was because there was some kind of great famine or something in Denmark at that time, that a lot of Danish people just left their country and came to United States. And they were in many different states, but some of those people who came to San Francisco, they decided that they want to try to find a place to preserve their own culture and their own habit and custom. So they actually raised a large sum of money and bought a huge piece of land that was not really a thriving town or anything. They just built this town from scratch. They bought 9,000 acres of land. And then eventually they opened the schools and other things. In November of 1911, they opened a school. At that time, when they started to emigrate from Denmark, about 1 in 10 Danes left their country. That is a huge number of people. I also saw a movie called The Emigrant. I think they were from Sweden, yeah. It's also at the end of 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century that people left because of drought or some unbearable situation. They all left their country. But that was just one big incident. Unlike the Irish people, they left because they were starving throughout probably 3-4 years. As a result, just about a third of the people went away from their country. Well, that's another story. So here we have Los Angeles at the bottom right. And if you drive from Los Angeles, you would pass the Oxnard and the Ventura and the Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is very pretty, yeah. Then the next morning you will go to Sova, and then you would go north. If you are going this way, yeah, this time I was going this way. Last time I was coming that way. And when I went back, I just quickly went back, okay. So this is the town I saw less than a year ago. And they also have windmills. We often windmill Dutch. Windmill water.
Can't hear you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll move closer. In the Netherlands, most of the country is below sea level. That's why they need the windmill to pump water out of the area that are low constantly here. But apparently windmill is not exclusive to the Netherlands. There are many, many countries that use the windmills. For example, if you go to any of the Greek islands, they all use windmill to do one thing or another. Many of them would grind the wheat into flour using windmill. That's why it's called the mill, M-I-L-L, which means to grind a grain into powder. And they often are situated next to a stream. So you can have a water wheel turning because of the stream. And here is the statue of a bust of Hans Christian Andersen in this Danish town. And here is a little museum, Hans Christian Andersen Museum. And it is in this building, but the entrance is here. So you turn around and you see it says museum, Hans Christian Andersen Museum. And the museum is upstairs. It's not a big museum, but you climb the steps and you go upstairs. So you would be climbing with these pictures hanging on the wall next to the stairs. I think there were like 2 other people there, and there's like a docent there. You could ask her questions, I said. I think it has some areas with books, some, as I mentioned, there are tools and pictures and so on. And this is about his hometown. Yeah, you can see the picture of his hometown with a map here showing Odense. Oh, okay. Here is Odense. That's where he came from. And this picture is like this. And these are the books I mentioned to you, and they are his books in all kinds of languages. And this one you can see is 安徒生童话故事. And this is probably a traditional font, while this 简论 is decidedly simplified. And this story about the emperor's new clothes, some people would choose to draw the pictures as if they were in China. So these people are Chinese children, and that's the emperor, not actually naked. And here's a little mermaid. And here I want you to pay attention to this particular picture. Hans Christian Andersen is very famous for creating paper cuts. Paper cut is very popular in China. Lots of people are doing paper cuts, but just about the only person in Europe doing that was Hans Christian Andersen. So he was very famous for doing all kinds of paper cuts, and he did a lot of them. But of course, people still can do such things on their own, even if no one else is doing it. So if I go to Mexico, I could see lots of stores where people hang up, cut up color papers in designs like this, but decidedly they invented themselves. So paper cut is some kind of art in Mexico, but Chinese really took it to a higher level because they have very, very intricate paper cut skills and tools. This is not a paper cut. It is a beautiful cover of one of his books. As I mentioned, he had the books and not just fairy tales. They could be novels or poems or other things. But this one is embossed binding, 5-volume edition of the complete fairy tale. Okay, so this is a fairy tale. And this would tell you stories about him or his family, or maybe some women or his mother or things like that. But I don't know the detail. But I mentioned that they did put some tools of the trade of a cobbler. So there are wooden shoes and those drills and the hammers and things like that, that he could have used, or at that time, if he were a cobbler, he would have used things like this. And these were some of the plates. In fact, if you go to Europe, many countries would learn to make porcelain by trying to steal the secrets from China. So for a long time, China was the only place that can make very, very beautiful porcelain in the whole world. And China sold ships loads of them especially to Europe, but also to other places, because one of the ships that sank near Indonesia had lots of plates with Arabic language written on it. So apparently the people in the Arabia, they also bought shiploads of porcelain from China. And if you go to famous European big cities like London or Copenhagen or Munich, they would have their very own porcelain factory that started to do it very, very well years after the Chinese learned how to do it. In Denmark, I went to a place, it's called an open air museum of a village of people who used to live in the countryside and doing all kinds of handicraft and so on. And there were ladies who were doing Danish Qinghuazi there. Okay. That's another bust of Hans Christian Andersen, but it has a little tilt. So this second floor is actually in the attic of that building. And here is a sample at the museum of the paper cuts that Andersen did. Have you ever heard of Hans Christian Andersen doing paper cuts?
No,
No,
I never, no.
Yeah.
Just his fairy tales.
Oh.
There was one day by accident, I was at UW. And in their Suslo library, they had an exhibit of Hans Christian Andersen's paper cut. That's probably 20 years ago. So by accident, I learned about it. I was amazed at how I would say he's very creative, and he's trying to tell stories with his paper cuts. And then I went downstairs, of course. Okay, so anything you want to talk about before I talk? Okay, we're coming back to the movie. So I'm showing this slide again. For example, if you have seen White Christmas, do you remember much about it? He was there Danny Kaye was in that movie with Bing Crosby. And of course, when you have two male leads, you would have two female leads. So there were two women that became their love interest. And the Bing Crosby was matched with, how do you call that? I forgot her name. Joan. Do you know the handsome actor who married the civil rights, a female attorney, the very famous George Clooney? Okay.
George Clooney?
George Clooney was the nephew of George Clooney. Okay, Rosemary Clooney. Okay, so I was trying to remember Rosemary Clooney, and she played the love interest of Bing Crosby in White Christmas, while Danny Kaye was matched with a different girl who could not sing. So the three of them would sing together, while the other girl would have a singer singing her part instead of her. What I mean is to dub that actress voice, but I could not remember her name nor the singer's name. So you have a movie that had supposedly three singers who were performers at big hotels, and that's how they met. Yeah, they were. Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby were in the hotel in Florida, and they met these two girls who are sisters, and they were singing and dancing, and then they hit it off and went together to Vermont because their old colonel or somebody had opened a new hotel there, so they want to help that colonel. That's a story. But what I mean is it's almost a musical with many, many songs in it. And of course, Danny Kaye being the second fiddle, by that I mean that Bing Crosby was the main character, main protagonist, and Danny Kaye was the sidekick. So he had to make all kinds of jokes and trying to do a matchmaking or whatever. So he got a lot of screen time for doing all those tricks. Okay, we can just talk about him for a little while. Have you seen him in any other movies? I just ordered one movie called The Court Jester from the library, and I was notified today that it arrived. But I don't have high hopes for his movies because he's a very a slapstick kind of comedian. By that I mean slapstick. Oh. So if you stand there and you talk and do jokes, that's a kind of comedian. If you imitate other people's voice, famous people's voice, you could be an impersonator. That's a kind of comedian. You could be talking like Johnny Carson, or you could be talking like whoever, yeah, or Barack Obama, or that's a kind of a performance. But for slapstick, it means 搞胡闹的常常是 physical jokes. You would be carrying something and you fall down and everything spilled, and that kind of joke. And Danny Kaye often engaged in that kind of slapsticks. And I don't really like that, but I've seen many of his movies that he was in doing those, I would say, low-class jokes, for lack of a better word. Here it says, the second bullet, it says, his performances featured physical comedy. Physical comedy is you do something physical in order to get people to laugh, usually by being acting stupidly. Okay, idiosyncratic pantomimes. He often in this movie that we saw, he often would make sounds that are funny. For example, tuck tuck or tss, tss. So these are not what people usually say. So it's kind of creative for him to do those things, and that's what idiosyncratic means. That means unique or strange or weird or very creative way. And pantomime is 哑剧, You have seen probably a French man called Marcel Marceau, and he's a master of pantomime. What I mean is he would be his face would be made up like a clown, and he never spoke a word, which 就是哑剧，就是这个意思。He does not say a word, and he is acting and letting you know what he means. And for example, one of the things he would do is to pretend that he was walking downstairs. So he would stand there and he would keep walking while he gets lower and lower and lower. So you would imagine that he was walking down, and lots of comedians learned from him and tried to do it. Sometimes Lucy, I love Lucy, and she did many of those things too. Many of her jokes are physical. And he would also do rapid fire novelty sounds. So when he was singing some song, he would do, it's just like water flowing down with lots of words very, very quickly. That's one way to do a comic performance. He was in, Danny Kaye was in 17 movies, including all these. I have seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which was made into a new one by Ben Stiller. Yeah. It did not do very well, I think. I have also seen Inspector General and Hans Christian Andersen and White Christmas, and tomorrow I will have seen The Court Jester. So these are all his roles in which he was a comedian, because he just likes to make fun of people or himself. And he does sing all those songs. And he was the first ambassador at large of UNICEF. Nowadays, we have tons of movie stars who are ambassadors at large of UNICEF. One of the very famous one would be Audrey Hepburn or Princess Diana. And they would go out on behalf of UNICEF to many other places in the world to raise awareness of, for example, Diana would go to places where in the Balkan Peninsula, they had landmines that are not cleared. and Diana would be there trying to raise funds for people to know that this is a problem for those people who live there, because if they walk around, they could be killed when a landmine, 就是地雷哈, when a landmine explode. And they would go often to poor countries like in Africa or something like that. So like Angelina Jolie, once she said, if I go somewhere, the reporter will follow. So I would like to go to places where people should take a look at in order for them to know that there are such things in the world. If I don't go there, maybe they never will find out. That's why the UNICEF would engage these famous people to go to the poor countries so that the rich countries people would be exposed to these things. And of course, the poor people in those poor countries would also be exposed to other people in the world. Okay. And this director, I said that he was not the brother of, or a nephew or whatever, of King Vidor, but he did some very famous movies as well. The last one I have seen, Song Without End, it's the biography of Franz Liszt, who is Hungarian. I was talking about Hungary and Finland having different, very different languages from other European countries. And Liszt being a Hungarian people, Franz Liszt, you would call him Franz Liszt, but when he was born, he was a Liszt Franz, because everyone in Hungary put their last name first and their first name last, because they consider themselves Asian. Asian people put their last name first. And Franz Liszt was called Liszt Franz, okay? And that was a story I watched. I don't know whether it's true or not, but Liszt was a good friend with Wagner, Richard Wagner, and there were quite a few movies about Wagner as well. And here there's a movie, A Farewell to Arms, which is made from Ernest Hemingway's story, A Farewell to Arms, and it was made into 2 movies, not, I think twice. This one was probably had Rock Hudson and who was a girl, I forgot. Anyway, I've seen that one, but there's one that's older. Pardon me?
I think it's Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer Jones, I think so, yes. You're right. I think so, yeah. And only a few years before that, we had the same movie made from the same story, and it had Gary Cooper and Helen Hayes in it. And the Swan I haven't seen, that was Grace Kelly. The movie came out when she got married to Prince Rainier at that time. So we call this 天鹅公主. She was a princess in that movie. And I heard that Rhapsody was a movie with Elizabeth Taylor, but I haven't seen it. And very importantly, he made 3 movies, The Cover Girl, Gilda, and The Loves of Carmen, all 3 with Rita Hayworth. I am not quite familiar with Rita Hayworth, but she was quite some girl, and she was very famous in these movies. So I would say Charles Vidor was a very famous director for having done 3 movies by Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth is very famous for inventing a part that is used in all our cell phone right now. So she was some kind of girl genius.
The basic theory of cell phone.
Yeah, she invented the parts. I don't know what parts, but that was still being used in our cell phone. Everybody has it in their cell phone. And she is a famous movie star. And if you have seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, that had Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman in it, and they were prisoners in a prison, and eventually they escaped. And how they did that, it was on the wall, there's a picture, a huge picture of Rita Hayworth. And so they had this picture covering the hole that they dig a tunnel from. That's how I learned about Rita Hayworth. Okay. But Gilda is a very, very famous movie. I think she was in it against Glenn Ford. Glenn Ford was a very famous, a very low-keyed and quiet and respectable actor. Yeah, he was also in The Love of Carmen, I think. Anyway, that's my bit about this slide. But Frank Lesser was the person who wrote those songs. I think he's a genius for doing that job, because all the songs are very different and lovely and very catchy. And I could sing almost every one of them. Just imagine, I saw the movie when I was like 10 years old, and I could sing many of those songs from that time, and I did not forget. So I think he is great for writing all those beautiful songs. But he's kind of dated. You have seen Guys and Dolls, which is a musical written by him. You have Marlon Brando and Gene Simmons in it. And we had Frank Sinatra in it. So these are very famous people. And many of them sing in that movie. And another movie is quite funny, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. It's a satirical or sarcastic story, saying that you don't have to work hard. You just have to butter up your boss and make all the people there like you, and you can easily become very successful. So it's kind of 后黑学的故事. Okay. Where's Charlie Hans? Okay. And this is Moss Hart, who wrote the script. And he and Ben Hecht wrote together. And he is the screenwriter, but Ben Hecht was uncredited. I don't know what happened to Ben Hecht, that someone thought he was the greatest ever. But many of his scripts were uncredited, which means they list someone else as the writer, but he actually did a lot of the writing. But we're talking about Moss Hart, not Ben Hecht right now. So Moss Hart died quite suddenly when he was like 57 or 58 of a heart attack. And so it was very shocking to a lot of people at that time. And he was a stage director or producer most of the time, but also involved in movies as well. And he was involved in all these plays and screenplays and so on. And I highlighted two of them. They were screenplays that he wrote. He also did some directing, but most of the time he did the script. And The Gentleman's Agreement was a movie quite respectable with Gregory Peck and Dorothy McGuire, while A Star is Born is one of the very many remakes. Then this one had James Mason and Judy Garland in it. And the most recent one had Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. And you would think that it's been made into movies so many times. Who needs yet another one? But the new one is really good. I'm surprised to find that the new movie was really good. Okay. I wonder if you have seen that. And Lady Gaga, of course, sang all his songs. But I think Bradley Cooper also sang all the songs. He is supposed to be a very famous singer, but at the end of his career, because he's an alcoholic. And this is a story of a famous man helping a young girl to make it in the business, but the man is just going downhill and died before the movie finished. So that's the story of A Star is Born. And there are many versions before those that I just mentioned. And there was one with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson. They did a version of that. So this is Ben Hecht. He, as I mentioned, some people think he was the greatest screenplay writer ever. And if I read some of the movies, you would be surprised. Wow. But he wrote too many. Yeah. When I copied down the 130 movies that he wrote, there were 4 slides. So I trimmed it down to 1 slide. Otherwise, you would not be able to read it if I put on 1. So he was very prolific. And this is, because he died some time ago, this is, how do you say, you start from the very end, at the end of here. Okay, it's 1933 was one of his earlier ones here, and it's called Scarface. Of course, Scarface was remade into other versions, like one with Al Pacino, okay? Betty Grable, Rasputin, and Street. Oh, there's one. This is A Star is Born. This is older than any of the 2, the 3 that I just mentioned. It's 1937. So Ben Hecht was pretty old, I suppose. And the Gong Ding, Stagecoach, that is 一马车, Stagecoach. Wuthering Heights is 咆哮山庄. His Girl Friday is really, really famous. It had Cary Grant and Don Amish and Rosalind Russell. And Spellbound with Gregory Peck and how do you call that? Some of you must have seen Spellbound.
意乱情迷.
Yeah, yes. Ingrid Bergman. That's
Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah, Ingrid Bergman. That's right. Yeah, that was a very good movie. Yeah. And the Guild that we just mentioned, Notorious, also has Ingrid Bergman. I'm going from the bottom up, and here we have Notorious, also has Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman. Duel in the Sun had Gregory Peck and Jennifer Jones, and the great Joseph Cotton. Yeah. Strangers on the Train, which I saw recently. It's a very, very good Hitchcock movie.
Yeah. How come so many says uncredited?
Yeah, I wonder. It's like most of them are uncredited. I would say that sometimes a movie would have a script that went through a dozen of people, and they decided to just put on 1 or 2 names in the end. They cannot possibly put all those names there, but they are a big company, a big machine that does movies, churns out movies all the time. And every time they have something that's almost very close to finish, but something is just not right, they would hire a very reliable person to fix it up. So this person would come in and do some sprucing up and then this movie is okay, then they can show it to the people. Movie business involves a lot of money and many investors, and many people have different ideas, and sometimes a project would get stuck and could not go through. And there are many movies did not finish because of one reason or another. So I'm sure that many of the producers or directors, they have their favorite screenwriters who would just step in and fix something for them. That's why he would go in and do this fixing for them. And these are all very famous movies, but he is credited. Yeah. Let's go through this: Monkey Business, Hans Christian Andersen, Angel Face, Ulysses, Guys and Dolls, The Man and the Golden with a Golden Arm. That's a Frank Sinatra movie about a drug addict. Yeah. The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell. Trapeze is 空中飞人. Have you seen it? Like Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis and Gina Lolo Brigida. Yeah, that's Trapeze. Hunchback of Notre Dame has Anthony Quinn and Gina Lolo Brigida. It's from Victor Hugo's story, 钟楼怪人. Here's Farewell to Arms. There were quite a few of those. And The Sun Also Rises. It was also from a novel by Ernest Hemingway. Or Jones. I actually have seen John Paul Jones. It's about a composer of military marching bands. And North to Alaska, that has John Wayne and Stuart Granger. And The Walk on the Wild Side, Mutiny on Bounty. Mutiny on Bounty was made into a movie many times. So this one is probably Marlon Brando with Charles Lawton. Later on, there was Mel Gibson with Anthony Hopkins. And I think there are more than that too, yeah. Cleopatra, of course, is a big movie, and it went through lots of trouble. It almost did not finish with Richard Burton and who was that? Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah, that was at that time the most expensive movie ever made. That's why they need someone to fix the script. Okay. And the last one is Casino Royale. It is a real 007 movie. He also had a hand in that. Anyone wants to say anything? I don't know if we would go on doing things like this. I just thought at least today we got people to jump in and say a lot of things. I like that, but maybe some of them are still, too much of it was from me, and I should really stop talking about movies. And when I talk about movies, people would stare blankly at the ceiling. I don't, do you like this format?
Yeah, it's fun, but probably more people ought to jump in and say
That's right, yes.
or even in Chinese.
Yeah.
And then
Well, I didn't realize there are other people, so many other people. I didn't look. Okay. People really should jump in and say something. I'm just hoping that there would be some movie that you have seen and you can talk about it. Anything is okay because this is an English conversation group. I wouldn't say class, it's not a class. Well, to look back at the movie, I think it's pretty enjoyable. And if you like to, you can find the parts in the movie with the songs, and you can find the lyrics from the internet. And then you could just practice singing some of the songs. What I find very helpful by learning songs is that songs are easier to remember than text. For example, there are people, I'm sure, when you grow up, some of the people in your class, they could sing Huang from the beginning to the end, but they could not recite any of the poems or articles, essays, or whatever that the teacher assigned you to remember. That's because sounds just come naturally. And if you sing a song repeatedly, you will learn the structure or the meaning of the words easily, instead of reciting a list of vocabulary that is just not very helpful.
Hey, Joe, this is Sophia.
Yes.
Will you consider to make this class in-person class in the future?
I've talked to Ruping about it. At that time, I said I did not feel very safe yet. However, more and more classes open up. And when I talked to her, I said I really prefer having my PowerPoint go out directly to everybody who's watching, because if I sit there and they take a movie of me sitting there, then people could not see the PowerPoint clearly. But she told me that they could do both. There's a picture of me doing the talk, while people could also see the direct broadcast of the PowerPoint. So I watched some recently when we had this lady who came to teach people to grow microgreen, and there was indeed her own PowerPoint. You can see very clearly. However, where she was talking, there were so many people making noises. It's really very hard to understand what she was saying, but it did not matter too much in her case, because she was just saying that, oh, you take this and you do this and so on. But if I'm talking about travel, I need everybody to be absolutely quiet about it. I cannot have my voice broadcast along with many other noises. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that whoever gonna host even the event, the speech event, or this class, the host has to be careful to mute everybody,
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you can keep the whole class in a quiet mode.
Yeah,
I think there's no problem. You just come to the class, come to the east side. You still can use the Zoom to broadcast your speech. It's no problem at all. But I think because just like if we're in the Zoom, everybody stay home. You really cannot see people. What are we doing? And people don't talk. But in person, we might talk.
Yeah, that's true. And there are people who just ignored everybody. They're on the phone and talking and laughing, and they did not know they were being broadcast.
Yeah, I think the Zoom, you just have to be careful. When you log into the Zoom, you better mute yourself, then start a conversation later on. You have to on and on, but the host can mute everyone. So the hosts is very important.
That's right. Yeah, I am not familiar with that. I have to learn to do that. Yeah.
but you're not a host, right?
Right now, I'm not.
Yeah, you're not. Right. Once you are a host, then you can mute everyone.
Uh-huh. But
I really like you to come into the east side.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I thought about it too, yes.
Maybe we can do it one and just see what happens.
I definitely think having an audience would probably be helpful.
Yeah, just like before, right? We all get together and talk.
Yeah. Uh-huh. But recently, it seems there were more cases now. We're going through another upswing.
Yeah, but I think it's still up to you. If you don't feel comfortable to come over, that's fine. But we have Thursday tea time and Saturday speech. Not that many people, but still a few people come to the side. So it's good to see all the people.
Yeah. Tea time is also a little different because many people wanted to sing and to say things on the occasion. So it could be even harder to control the people. Yeah. Maybe I'll look into that. I don't often go into the live classes. Another thing which is selfish of me is that it's a very long drive for me.
It is true.
It's about 45 minutes drive here. And I really enjoy doing it at home, but of course, missing some of the other elements.
Yeah, also like your class end of the 4 p.m., around 4 p.m. is traffic time. When you back, maybe like traffic is not good. So
that's
another issue for you.
Well, we can always change the time, but still, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, you need to come out, okay? We can change time to 1 o'clock.
Yeah, earlier.
Actually, we can come over earlier. We can take you out to a lunch.
Yeah, we can have a lunch together. Then after lunch, we can have a class.
Well, let me think about it. Yeah, the other time I saw that you all went to lunch, I said, "Oh, I wish I could be there."
Yeah, we went out for lunch a couple times already.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to say, but even now, still the COVID, the virus is still spread, but I think it's not very serious so far. It's because we have all the vaccine. Okay, also should be okay for now. But the important thing is that your immune system, you need to build up like health, eating, health, like sleep well, or need to do some exercise like that way. Just try to build up your immune system, and you should be okay.
You never know.
Yeah, I know. But in the future, we don't know in the future. But so far, still okay. Yeah, not very serious problem. Yeah.
Okay, our next class will be like the regular class. What time would it be? Let me see. I also had a movie picked for the second one of the month, but I may or may not do that. Let me think about it. April, today,
May 4th.
20th. Okay, yeah, May 4th.
May 4th.
Yeah, May 4th. 五四运动, huh? Okay. Okay, that's it for today then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Where is it? Okay, stop share and leave.